Imagine accomplishing 30 hours worth of work in a single hour with consistency. Well, it's not a fantasy, it's a reality. For those who understand the deep science of productivity and how to untether the number of hours you work from the amount you achieve. Now, I'm Rían, founder and CEO of FlowState.com. We've trained everyone from Audi, Accenture, and the US Air Force to use neuroscience-based principles to access flow states at will. Now, most people think productivity means doing more, but that's factually incorrect. Productivity is about the ratio between what you put in and what you get out. Productivity is technically defined as input cost relative to output value. This means one of the simplest ways to boost productivity is to get the same or better results while putting in fewer hours, less energy, or less attention. The typical view of productivity is input-based, not output-based. A factory isn't considered more productive because the workers are sweating more. It's considered more productive if it produces more units per hour. The same is true for you. If you can create more output value per unit of input, you are more productive. Leverage allows you to increase output without increasing input, or achieve the same output with less input. Just as a physical lever allows you to lift a heavy object with minimal force, leverage in productivity lets you multiply results while holding effort constant or even reducing it. Let me give you an example. If you're a dentist, you gain leverage by hiring an assistant. This lets you fix more teeth per hour. If you're a writer, maybe you gain leverage by learning to type faster. This allows you to output or write more words in the same amount of time. So how do you actually gain leverage? Well, first, we have to overcome our biological resistance to gaining leverage. It's like being out in the cold, chopping firewood with a dull axe. You pause to sharpen it, but during the time you're sharpening the axe and not hacking at the tree, no wood gets cut. Your hands are freezing, your family's shivering, part of you is panicking because daylight is fading and your family needs firewood tonight. But once that axe is sharp, you're slicing through logs in half the time. That hour of delay buys you warmth for the rest of the season in the form of more chopped wood, which is your output in this case, for less input, which is the time you've got to hack at the tree. That's leverage. This temporary pause to gain leverage is what's known as the output dip. If you automate a system, it takes time to set up. So at first, you lose momentum. If you hire someone, they need training. So at first, things slow down. That makes your brain panic. Your brain doesn't care if what you're doing will save you hundreds of hours in the long run. It only cares that nothing got finished today. So it pulls you back into familiar linear effort, work that's easy to measure and fast to finish. So your brain starts quietly steering you back to what feels good in the moment, hacking at that down tree so that you get the reward of wood right away. And that's the trap. This is why so many people stay stuck in these effort loops forever. They try to build leverage, they hit an output dip, they interpret the slowdown as lost productivity, and then they revert to familiar tasks that feel productive but aren't. Not because they lack discipline, not because they lack intelligence, but because their brain is wired to avoid what leverage requires. So how do we push through the output dip so we can gain leverage? Well, there are two steps. And by the way, if you want a mental model for how to gain leverage, click the link below to download a free breakdown of what we're covering in this video so you can better gain leverage at any given time, and we'll send it to you immediately for free. Okay, the first step here is to cultivate what's known as a leverage lens. To gain leverage, you have to learn to see work fundamentally differently. Years ago, I hired two video editors. They both started with the same skills, the same role, and the same $4,000 a month salary. But within 2 years, one was making $250,000 a year, including equity in a company. The other, zero change in skill, zero change in output, and of course, as a result of that, zero change in their income. Now, why? Well, the first editor, let's call him Johnny, saw the world a little differently than the second. While editing, he constantly asked, how could this task be done faster or better next time? This way of viewing work guided his every decision and action. With this perspective, he built systems to make editing faster. For every hour he spent editing, he spent 30 minutes learning how to recruit and manage other editors. The second editor, he stuck to the same process, using the same outdated workflow again and again and again and again, with no attempt to build leverage within it. Johnny mastered project management. He learned how to use the required software. He built automated pipelines. He hired assistants to handle the repetitive work that he knew he could reallocate the time on to other things. Soon, he wasn't just an editor, he was running a high output, streamlined editing team. Same starting point, same skills, arguably the same fundamental abilities. The only difference, Johnny had developed a leverage lens, a way of seeing work where every action is evaluated through the question, does this action create future leverage that will increase my output for every unit of input or not? This is what you want to cultivate, this leverage lens and the willingness to tolerate the output dip. To further illustrate this, consider the difference between the dopamine glutton amateur and the peak performer's sensitivity and awareness around leverage. So manager A, who's operating with no leverage lens, does the following. For the 500th day in a damn row, manager A logs into their inbox and spends 2 hours replying to the same types of emails they've answered countless times before, treating each one as a separate task to check off. Manager B does the same thing at first, but on day 3, something clicks for manager B. They pause and they ask a different kind of question. Why am I doing this the same way every time? That's the leverage lens kicking into gear. It's the shift in awareness that lets you spot repeat work as a pattern worth solving. So instead of replying again, manager B does something a little different. They write a short template. That one decision drops response time from 45 minutes to 5 forever. Manager A sees tasks, manager B sees opportunities for leverage. Train yourself to view every task and decision through the filter of leverage. Constantly, obsessively, incessantly ask, is this the highest leverage use of my time? Filtering every action that you're doing, every moment of the day, through that question. How can I get more output for the same or less input? And this is where the leverage trifecta is our friend. Turns out there are really only 3 places that you as a knowledge worker, an entrepreneur, an intrapreneur, an executive need to gain leverage. And those 3 things are proficiency, process, and people, the 3 P's that make up the leverage trifecta. Now, it gives you a consistent way to view, diagnose, and fix productivity gaps anytime you feel stuck or stalled. Master these 3 leverage levers, and you'll flip tiny inputs into massive outputs over time. So, the 3 parts of the leverage trifecta. Firstly, proficiency leverage. Learn the right skill, not all the skills. Then there's process leverage. Turn one-off tasks into repeatable systems and processes. Then there's people leverage, where you multiply yourself through others. Let's dive into each one. Firstly, with proficiency. So learn the right skill, not all the skills. Most people don't stop to ask what skill, if mastered, would make all of this work easier or unnecessary, and as a result, boost what I can do in any given hour forever in the future. So how do you figure out which skill will give you the most proficiency leverage? Well, step 1 is to identify your biggest constraint. Look at the results you want, but don't yet have. There's a skill gap blocking you from them. If you're an entrepreneur struggling to get clients, maybe your biggest source of proficiency leverage could come from mastering sales. If you're a creator whose content isn't reaching enough people, maybe your proficiency leverage lies in mastering distribution or leveling up your communication skills so that for every hour you spend making content in the future, you get more views. The second step is to run the 5-for-4 proficiency leverage protocol. Once you've identified the skill that's disproportionately suppressing results and that will have a disproportionately positive impact on results if mastered, you need to deliberately focus on building that skill with intensity. Block time and commit to skill acquisition. We call this a 5-for-4. That means 5 hours of skill building per week for 4 weeks straight. This gets you to the 20-hour mark, enough to gain real working proficiency in a single high-leverage skill. It can look like this: 1 hour per day across the 5-day work week. It could be 5 hours blocked out every Saturday, or 5 hours a day for 4 days straight if you want to really sprint through it. The next point of the leverage trifecta is number 2, which is process leverage. Turn one-off tasks into repeatable systems. I have a friend, a brilliant artist, who spends 2 full days monthly counting canvases, tracking paint tubes, and shopping for supplies, burning 24 creative days annually on inventory management instead of on painting. Now, despite what it may sound like, her issue isn't time management. It's actually a lack of process leverage. Basic inventory system for tracking supplies at preset levels would transform those 2 monthly inventory days into almost a month of extra creative days yearly. Plus, it would save her money on overbuying supplies she didn't need that much of. A low leverage entrepreneur does everything manually. They spend 2 hours a day on admin work that could be fully automated. That's 10 hours a week, over 500 hours a year wasted on tasks that create no leverage. A high leverage entrepreneur builds systems. They have pre-written email sequences that send automatically. They have onboarding processes. Their invoicing is handled by software. That's 500 hours per year freed up to focus on more high leverage work to continue compounding your per hour output. Here's how to spot your process deficiencies and then address them. First, Look at any task you've done at least twice. If you've done it at least twice, you're going to do it again. That's a sign that it needs a system. To build your standard operating procedure, your SOP, you want to generally define the purpose. What's the goal? Detail every step, write instructions so clear that anyone, irrespective of their skill or experience, could follow them. And if you can't hand it off, you haven't built it with enough detail or clarity, most likely. If a computer can do it, a computer should do it. Automate data entry, scheduling, file organization, lead capture, anything that follows predictable steps. Finally, eliminate what doesn't need to happen at all. The highest form of process leverage isn't delegation or automation, it's deletion. Aim to build at least one new process monthly. From travel checklists to client onboarding flows, whatever they are, they'll all accumulate and compound your leverage. Here's the rule: when something's urgent, don't just put out the fire, build a sprinkler system. Yes, you'll temporarily tolerate a dip in output, but the leverage you gain will make that output dip worth it. Now, the final point in the leverage trifecta is people leverage. Multiply yourself through others. Now, back in the 70s, a guy called Robert Caro was broke, stuck, and way out of time. He had spent years working on a book you may have heard of called The Power Broker. It's an 1,100-page epic about New York power broker, America's most famous public servant, Robert Moses. The book would go on to win a Pulitzer and become one of the most important biographies of the last 100 years. But at the time, it was going nowhere. Caro had no money, he had no publisher, and no real way to finish the book as he was running out of money. His wife was becoming increasingly unnerved by their worsening financial prospects, and Caro almost threw the towel in to get a lower level job for stability and scrapped the whole project entirely. And that's when another Robert Gottlieb, stepped into the picture. Gottlieb was the editor-in-chief at Knopf. He read Caro's manuscript, saw the potential, and made the call that changed everything. He didn't just publish Caro's book, he got Caro the funding to finish it. He worked with him line by line to make the book incredible. And he went on to be Caro's editor for the next 50 years. You can't afford to wait for your Gottlieb to come knocking on your door and save you. You have to go find them, and that's where building people leverage comes in. People leverage deficiencies occur when the absence of a key individual, be it an employee, a business partner, or a mentor, limits your ability to progress and succeed. Finding your Gottlieb means identifying the one person who would transform your biggest challenge into a trivial one, like a chief sales officer who could 10x your company's value, or an industry mentor who's already built what you're trying to build. Identify your most critical, biggest current goal, pinpoint the constraint that's capping your output, determine who could remove that obstacle completely, then take action based on who you need. People leverage works because you're a bottleneck. If every decision, task, and problem has to go through you, your growth and output is capped at your own personal bandwidth. One right person can collapse 5 years of struggle into 6 months of acceleration. Now, we've covered the importance of cultivating a leverage lens and mastering the 3 types of leverage. There's a third and final step to operationalizing this whole thing, and we call it the leverage sprint. A while back, when I was transitioning out of my first company and building a new one, there was a period in which I felt this low-grade, almost physical pain from how deleveraged I had been. I wasn't stuck because I didn't know what to do. I was stuck because I hadn't made the time to get above water once and for all. What I actually needed was a leverage sprint, a short, intense burst where I paused everything non-essential and worked longer, harder, and more deliberately with an exclusive focus on gaining leverage for a defined, limited window of time. That meant 10 days of 12-hour workdays focused entirely on leverage, setting up the billing systems, automations, SOPs, and calendar structures, and all the other stuff that would free me permanently. Think of it like pushing a car that's out of gas. It takes a heavy effort up front to get the thing moving, but once it's rolling, it takes far less to keep it going. That's your leverage sprint. Here's how to do it. Block off 1 to 4 weeks. During that time, increase your total working hours by 30 to 50% and spend at least 70% of those working hours building leverage, focused on people, process, and proficiency leverage, and nothing else. When we gain leverage, something fundamental shifts in our brain's reward system. This shift doesn't just make us more productive, it rewires our neural pathways to make flow states more accessible and frequent. It's a form of biological leverage. When you're in flow, productivity increases by up to 500% based on research from McKinsey. Creativity up to 430% based on research from the University of Sydney, and work done at DARPA and brain monitoring found that learning speed increases by up to 490%. 10%. As your leverage increases, so does your flow proneness, which flow researchers Marty Douglas and Smilek define as your tendency to drop into or experience flow states at any given time with more frequency and ease. Flow is just one part of a 4-phase cycle: struggle, release, flow, and then recovery on the back end. Every flow state is preceded by a struggle phase of high cognitive effort but low reward, where your brain resists focus. This is where most people quit. But leverage dramatically shortens this struggle phase. When your brain has experienced the massive rewards of high leverage work before, your brain recognizes the activity as high value, making it easier to initiate and sustain focus. This helps you push through the struggle phase in mere minutes. This is why top performers spend more time in flow. Their leverage stacks and creates a self-reinforcing loop between flow and leverage. When you put in place proficiency, processes, and people, you eradicate the low flow tasks that inhibit you from getting into the zone. And again, you can download a full breakdown of the leverage trifecta that you can use as an ongoing resource by clicking the link below. It's free, we'll send it to you right away. Now picture this: your career is a factory. Without leverage, you're the lone worker on the line. You can crank out widgets, 1 per hour every hour. If you're lucky, you get 4,000 work weeks in a lifetime. That's 160,000 widgets that you can crank out across your life maximum. 40 hours a week, no matter how hard you push, your dreams shrink to fit that box. What if you spent your first 50 work weeks not just making widgets, but building a machine? You design it, you tweak it, you perfect it. By week 51, that machine spits out 10 widgets an hour with no extra sweat from you. You don't just stop there, you refine it further. By week 150, it's hitting 100 per hour. Same 40 hours, but now you're stacking millions of widgets. You stop merely doing work and start systematically levering up. By the end of the first year building leverage, your output isn't tied to your hours anymore. It's multiplying by the month. By year 3, it's 10x or more. By year 5, you've built an ecosystem of leverage that compounds upon itself exponentially. Leverage turns time into an asset instead of a constraint. And when your productivity is no longer limited by your available hours, the ceiling on what's possible melts away. So remember the rule: time is finite, leverage is infinite. And if you gain leverage, like we're talking about here, what you can accomplish will be equally infinite. Now you've just seen how your leverage amplifies your output, but leverage alone won't get you into flow. There's a bigger system at play to access flow predictably, recover faster, and do more in less time. If you want to make leverage effortless, you got to master this. Click the video on screen now to learn how.